All right, guys. So today we're doing another interview, and I have one of my favorite writers on here today, Ed Brisson. He is definitely a big name. You guys probably heard him on X-Men. You also probably heard some of his crime stories, which are some of my favorite, like The Violent. But he is here today to interview some really big titles that are coming out, plus ones that just came out. But I'll let him introduce himself in case you don't know who he is, and he'll be able to kind of catch you up on some of the stuff that he's done.
Hey, yeah, I'm Ed Brisson, writer for Murder Book, which recently came out. I'm currently writing Deathstroke Incorporated. I just wrote the Batman annual that came out a couple weeks back. I've got a new creator-owned book called There's Something Wrong with Patrick Todd that's coming out through Aftershock next week, in less than a week. And yeah, it was just announced that I'll be writing a new Batman Incorporated series that will be out, I believe, in October.
Awesome. And so there's a lot of stuff coming out, some that's just came out, and I'm going to talk about some that I've actually just read, like Deathstroke in a little bit. But the question I love asking anybody that comes on the show, because I always get different answers. If somebody was a first-time reader for your work, since you've wrote for Big Two, but you also wrote a lot of your own indie stuff, what would be one or two books that you would probably suggest be the first book that they pick up for you?
I think sort of the purest like version of my writing would be and I'm just going to apologize right now. You can't see it here. Let me just tilt a little bit.
No
I have
problem.
a cat named Lasagna
Oh my
who
God.
is literally on my keyboard and hitting my keyboard nonstop. So if anything happens, that's him.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, if you want to read, sort of a good place to start, I guess, would be with my murder book stuff, which is black and white crime books that I've done. And we recently just did a sort of graphic novella called Catch and Release, or The Violent, which is it's just behind you there, which is a crime book set in Vancouver. At the time that I used to live in Vancouver, and it was the time that I was sort of about to leave the city. So in a large way, it was like my breakup letter with the city, and it touches on sort of the drug epidemic that's going on in Vancouver, the housing crisis, which in recent years has kind of spread everywhere, but Vancouver has been dealing with it for almost 20 years, which is sort of astronomical real estate and rental prices. And then maybe Sheltered as well, if you want to get away from something that's strictly crime, which is a book about a group of doomsday prepper children who do something drastic because they think the end of the world's coming and have to deal with the repercussions of what they do. It's a pretty dark book, but it's one that's still dear to me.
Yeah, Shelter is actually the first book that I've ever picked up from you. Loved it. The Violent was actually the second book that I picked up from you, and it was very depressing.
Yes.
So I didn't know how I felt after. I was like, wow.
We
And
call
then
those Brisson bummers.
well, it's funny because I was expecting kind of feel the same when I got Catch and Release, but it wasn't nearly as depressing for me. It was still dark, but I felt like The Violent was really hit me. And then I recently read Murder Book, which you only have one, right? There's only one book. Or
So there's the Catch and Release is sort of part of the whole murder
okay.
book thing. And then there's a murder book collection. So if you're talking about the Dark
Yes.
Horse collection that came out in 2015, that is the only thing that's initially I was publishing those, self-publishing those as single issues. So that Dark Horse book is actually everything collected that I'd published.
Gotcha.
So if you
really
have
good.
Catch and Release and you have that, then you've got everything.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Murder Book is I love, like, it almost reminds me of like short versions of Stray Bullets. And
Right.
I love that type of stuff. Anything where it's just like it's 6 pages and it tells a story is, to me, is something that's so interesting, because I always find that so hard to do. You have like 6 to 10 pages and you get it. You're like, oh, okay, that's what happened to these characters. But yeah, love all the murder books and everything like that. But talking about one of the biggest announcements, which really surprised me, that they're bringing back Batman Inc., is that you're now writing it. And I really enjoyed the new 52 Batman Inc. It was like really one of my favorite Grant Morrison stories. So I was really excited to see it come back, and even more excited that Ghostmaker is kind of the big guy here, the lead, and he's one of my favorite new characters for the Batman mythos. So what made you choose him as kind of the leader, at least from what I got from the Batman annual? He's going to kind of be leading it.
Yeah, so that was sort of something that DC wanted to do going in, as they wanted to. I think they want to put Ghostmaker in a more prominent position, and I think James and Josh had been setting that up within their runs. That Ghostmaker, at least there was a hint that Batman had offered him the position in the past, or had offered to take him in as a co-captain of it. I think part of it is just, Batman can't really be everywhere at once. With the book, he doesn't have neither the money nor the resources to lead an international sort of outfit like Batman Incorporated. So it made sense to put Ghostmaker in the role, because Ghostmaker does have both those at his disposal. He's got a ton of money. He's got a ton of resources. The thing I like about it is just the dynamic between Ghostmaker and Batman, and that they're in a lot of ways they train together, so they're very similar skill sets, but Ghostmaker definitely has a very different approach to everything. Something they talk about in the book frequently and leading up to this is that he's sort of a diagnosed psychopath who's sort of taken ownership of that, and in a very sort of almost like a Dexter style way. Dexter realizes he's going to be a serial killer, wants instead to be a force for evil, is going to be force for good and go out and kill other serial killers. Ghostmaker is much the same. He just realizes that he has zero empathy, and his goal with becoming a crime fighter is not necessarily just to clean up crime, but to essentially prove that he's better than everyone else out there. So I think it's just an interesting take to put someone like that in the lead of the team, because they have he and Batman have very different approaches to fighting crime. Ghostmaker has no problem with leaving bodies behind. The one promise, of course, that he has to make to Batman when he takes over Batman Incorporated is that he can't kill anyone, and he's already he's broken that at least once, in the stories that I've worked on. I think in the Shadow War short that we did with him in Clown Hunter, he ended up killing a couple of the ninjas who were after him. But I think it's interesting to have this sort of, he's running a team where he's sort of confined by Batman's moral code and has to sort of try and work within that, and it's not easy for him, and it's very easy for him to sort of stray from that without, and because he doesn't tend to feel a ton of guilt, so he's not gonna stress about it too much. And then taking someone like that and putting them in control of the team, I think how that plays with the minds and the sort of dynamic of the rest of the team, because these are people who've been following Batman. These are people who are inspired by Batman. They don't kill. They have a much stricter moral code than Ghostmaker. And so, like anytime new management comes in, the employees always hate the new manager. So this is it's an interesting situation where Ghostmaker has to kind of win over the team, but also doesn't give a shit if they like him or not, right? So
doesn't feel
so but like intentionally or not, he's going to have to sort of win their respect throughout the series. We have a pretty interesting dynamic going on in the book with Ghostmaker and Clown Hunter as well, where Ghostmaker at Batman's behest again takes Clown Hunter on sort of as his Robin, right? He's training Clown Hunter to be better than what Clown Hunter is, and not because Clown Hunter was sort of really impulsive. He went on mass killing sprees, taking out Joker's clowns. So you have these two, at the sort of head of the team who've no problem with killing and with being nasty when they want to be, I guess. And so I don't know, it's a real fun dynamic between them, the rest of the team, and actually between Ghostmaker and Clown Hunter. There's a lot of really fun stuff that we're going to be playing around with, especially in the first arc. And a great thing about this book too is I'm getting to work with John Timms, who was on Superman before, who is like, the work that he's just been doing on his book has been just gobsmacking. It's been incredibly beautiful, so much I don't know how to describe it. Just so incredible.
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to be working with him. Very happy. I think that when people see the book, they're gonna be pretty stoked.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Clown Hunter as well, which is weird because when I first saw him getting introduced, I was like, oh, this feels very much like a Red Hood younger version. But I actually like him a little bit more just because of what happened to him. I feel he's more justified in what he does. And then now that you say it's kind of gonna be like a little bit of a mentorship, that two kind of a little bit of psychopaths, though I feel like Clownmaker might be able to save him. But it's so interesting too that I love the dynamic with Ghostmaker and Batman, because I feel like you said, like he doesn't really feel, but when he's with Bruce, you kind of feel that bromance going on, which is really odd. And when he's fighting, he's just merciless, like he just will
Sure.
and not give a shit.
And I think that's the thing about being like, a psychopath, is that you can be charming, you can be endearing, you can be very pleasant to be around, but that, you can also flip the switch without, at a moment's notice, and all of a sudden become ruthless and incredibly brutal. And Ghostmaker does, like throughout the first arc, we're gonna find out about some really, brutal stuff he's done in his past that's is sort of coming back to haunt him because of that.
That is awesome. I also love Ghostmaker's design. I think it's one of the best designs in a while. So really excited about that. But with the series, I don't know if you're allowed to really talk about it. I like to always mention who is your favorite Bat family besides Batman, if Batman's your favorite.
So yeah, besides Batman, and I'm sort of taking all the Batman Inc. Characters out of the equation. I think my two favorite are actually Red Hood and Damian. There's something, they're both like really arrogant. They're both really flawed characters. I like that they're both constantly pushing at the edges of Batman's moral code and what's acceptable within the Bat family, but never really losing sight of what the core missions or objective are. But they're always pushing at the edges of it. And so they're really interesting and super flawed characters, and the more flawed a character is, the more likely I am to be interested in them.
Yeah, Damien's definitely a big character for me in terms of it's actually when I started really getting heavy into DC is when Damien came on board with the Grant Morrison original run, and he's always been such an interesting Robin to me because of that, because he was raised to kill and stuff, and Batman kind of was like, no, you can't do this, man, and he's like, well, this is what I know. But he's had such great growth over the years. Interesting, Red Hood, are we gonna see any of those characters mix up with Batman Inc?
So right now there's no plans to. That's not to say it's not going to happen. So my cat is still getting into my business here. It's not to say it's not going to happen, but at present there's no plans to do it. But I would love to bring both, or one of them into the series at some point.
Yeah, I find it really interesting with Red Hood and Ghostmaker, since like they do remind me of each other in some ways. So that I don't know if I've ever read a comic with them really together. I've read all of the last run of Batman. I don't remember, but I haven't read Williamson's Batman, so they could have already interacted. But yeah, that is awesome. I'm super excited for Batman Inc.
Thanks,
but
man.
the series I'm excited most, I can't tell you how long I've had this on my pull list, is the Predator series. It is finally almost here. At least I got an email yesterday about all the covers, so I'm very excited. I picked a bunch of them. Are you able to really tell us? I found this interesting when I interviewed Philip Kenny Johnson. He's doing Aliens, and his main goal with Alien was to make it very much like the movies, and unlike the Dark Horse where it felt like very much an expanded universe. With Predator, are we going to have the feel of the movie, or more of you're doing your own thing?
You know what? I don't know. I like when I pitched the idea to my editor, the first editor who was on the book. His response was like, "This is great because it feels like the movies without feeling like the movies."
Oh,
and that makes like no sense, but I like it. He's like so I don't know, like I grew up on the Predator films. I saw the first Predator at the drive-in when I was, I think, 11 or 12, and I had it on VHS after that, and I watched the hell out of that. And same with I've seen all of them in the theaters upon release, for better or worse. And so I'm a huge fan of the films. I never, I played the video games and such, and sort of dipped in and out with the comics. But I think, I don't know, like I wasn't necessarily set on making it feel like the films, or making it's definitely not really an expanded universe either. It's more like its own thing. The book that I'm working on, and it's weirdly like an idea that had been kicking around in my head probably for a decade. I've always been a fan of Predator, so I kind of, when they asked me if I wanted to work on it, I already had an idea ready to go. I think it's the quickest turnaround from them asking me to pitch on something to me sending a pitch. Like, it was like maybe 12 hours,
Oh,
or
wow.
normally it's like 2 weeks for me. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to feel like the film, any of the films, but I don't, this is me rambling, say I don't know. I'm really happy with it. I think it feels like a really good Predator story. I think, we did some interesting stuff where we flipped things around a little bit. Like, this book is set in the not too distant future, about 30 years in the future, where sort of space exploration is more advanced than what we have now, but not too far advanced. And this one is more, it's a revenge story, more than it is a story about predators hunting people, or people trying to escape the predator. The protagonist of our story, Theta, is someone whose parents were killed by a predator when she was 12, while they were on a sort of exploratory mission, researching a planet for possible, inhabitation. They were also just, cataloging plants and all that sort of stuff. Her parents, were scientists, and they're killed by a predator. She's supposed to go back to Earth. The whole crew is killed, and the autopilot on the ship is supposed to take her back to Earth. But a 12-year-old Theta is able to actually override the autopilot, and she takes the ship, and over the course of 15 years, sort of studies the predators, and starts hunting them. So the book is actually about the predators being hunted, and not the other way around.
I love that.
So it's a 27-year-old out there hunting down predators, looking for the specific predator who killed her parents. And so through her, she's got this sort of background through her parents of research and learning behaviors and patterns. And so she's been able to sort of track predator hunting routes, that they'll go on, which is something that is sort of hinted at in the films in the past.
Yeah.
And so she's finding these hunting routes, finding the sort of like their, for lack of a better term, their schedule, like when they're hitting different planets, and she goes and she finds them and she hunts them down. And she's killed, by the time we come into the book, she's killed 22 predators.
Wow.
So she's not someone to be screwed with. She bears the scars of it too, right? She looks like somebody who's killed. Like she's covered in scars. She's missing a leg, so she has a prosthetic leg. She's not a terribly well-adjusted person. She's been by herself. It's just her and the ship's AI for the last 15 years. But I think she's a really interesting character that I think that readers are gonna be able to, like, obviously sympathize with, but I think they'll dig her. And I'm really happy with how it all came together. I think it's a really fun story, and just so it doesn't make, so if any listeners think that we're making the predators seem weak because she's taken out so many of them, it's absolutely not the case. They are going to show up and cause damage. The problem with her having hunted so many predators is that now she's on the predator radar. So they're actually, well, she's hunting them while they're also hunting her by the end. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on. I just was signing off on layouts for issue 6 last night.
Awesome.
Kev Walker's been doing an actually incredible job on art, and he always has a ton of ideas he likes to throw at the story. So that's been really great. It's always good when it feels like a real collaborative process. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. and it feels like maybe it could be one of the movies, but it's not like any of the films we've seen so far. And we weren't interested in setting it, within anything that's necessarily already exists within the films.
Okay.
Although, there are moments later on in the book where someone mentions stuff that is sort of a
Like Easter egg.
like an issue in Colombia that because there's at least one scientist that shows up later who's aware of the predators and what they've been doing in their visits to Earth, but like very little information is available through him. It's sort of like it's like him studying Bigfoot almost.
Gotcha. That's to me is awesome. I love Predator. I read the books actually growing up a lot in high school, and I always found it fascinating that I never really read the comics. Now I'm really excited to read that omnibus whenever it comes out of the Dark Horse. But I always felt like Predator is one of the more unique science fiction monsters, I guess you can call them, because they're hunters and they do have that code, unlike the aliens where they just attack you or impregnate you. The Predators are vicious, but they also have that honor. So that to me, getting hunted as a predator is going to be the most interesting angle. I don't know if I've ever read anything quite like that. Maybe mid-story when the hunter had enough.
Sure, yeah.
But never.
There's always that point where like Dutch turns around and he's like, okay, but like it's because he's backed into the corner, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is like, setting that up as a goal from the beginning was like an idea that's been kicking around my head for a long time. Initially, it was like a sort of like Punisher in space style idea that had sort of warped and became this. But it's a lot of fun, and I'm really proud of how this book's come together.
I'm very excited that now we can actually get an Alien vs Predator, hopefully down the line, hopefully better than the last two movies. But talking about movies, my favorite question, because I always get the craziest answers for here. Besides the first one, which is always my favorite, what is your second favorite Predator movie? Now there's a few.
So I would say that the second is probably my next favorite. I did see that one when it first came out in theaters. Again, like I used to watch it as a double bill with Predator a lot when I was a kid. I know it gets a lot of flack, and going back and watching it, there really is a lot of stuff that really doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
Danny
Glover.
Danny Glover's character. It doesn't really he's not really like a really well-defined character. He's like he's a sort of pastiche of cop cliches, really, which kind of sucks. But when they do allow him to be this sort of interesting cop character, I think he's sort of an interesting combatant for the Predators. I do like that the Predators sort of, I like that it sets up a few things that some of those things have sort of been tossed out with subsequent films, but I do like the idea that this film sort of sets up that Predators are on some sort of regular
cycle of
hunting on Earth. One of the things that seems to get glossed over a lot is that the Predators are here and they're hunting the Jamaican gang. In is it New York or LA?
I think that's LA.
LA, yeah.
Like a futuristic LA.
Yes. Well, it was like 4 years in the future or whatever.
They acted like space guns and stuff,
but I think it was so that they could have that 10 years, right, between before. So I do like that they set up that they're on a cycle. He's hunting the Jamaicans. And one of the things that they do in the film that I thought was interesting is the Jamaican gang is wiping out the Colombian gang in LA. And the Predators were hunting the Colombians in the first movie. So if the Jamaicans are taking out the Colombians in the second movie, then they're the bigger threat. And that's why it feels like the Predators are after them. I like that it sort of lays out that they tend to hunt during heat waves or whatever. And then there was like a tie to the comics right at the end of the film too, where the Predator hands Danny Glover that gun, and that gun is actually from one of the comics. So all that sort of stuff I really thought was fun. It was interesting. Um, I know there's something else I'm missing that I really liked about that film. But yeah, like when I was a teenager, it was a great action movie.
Yeah.
The older I get, the more I could sort of poke holes in it. But I think next to that, it's probably my second favorite. Although I will say, I think that like Predators gets more flack
I agree.
than it deserves. I think Predators is actually a solid film.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were two scenes in it that almost undo the entire what makes the film great.
Yeah.
But I think that if you remove those, it's a solid like start to end film that really sort of pushes Predator lore and really sets up this interesting idea of Predator training grounds where they pull in all these people to hunt. It does open up the idea of like is there like a Predator administration that's keeping track of like all these terrible serial killers that the cops can't catch? But that aside, I think it's a fun film, and I thought Adrian Brody was great in it. So yeah, that would be my second favorite.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually my wife runs a horror channel, and she's actually ranking the Predator films in the next couple of weeks. And I had to show her Predators and Predator 2. I showed her about a year ago, and her reaction to both made me laugh because seeing someone now watch them, Predator 2, she didn't really understand why he was like complaining that he was old and stuff when they were writing the character younger. I feel like they hired him just to make a big name, and they didn't have him in mind in the original script, someone like Danny Glover, because he doesn't really match some of the lines that they're talking about during the movie. I did like the setting a lot. I love the setting for 2. I think in a city, concrete jungle type idea is one of the best ideas. And then I showed her Predators last week, and she enjoyed it, but she was wondering why Adrian Brody was just spouting out one-liners. I was like, that's, I think, just a callback to the original Predator.
Sure, yeah.
But it feels weird watching him when it's 2010 and him saying the lines that were normal in like 1980. So, but she liked it. She actually liked it up until the end. She didn't like the very end, but she liked the whole. I don't know, this is an old movie, so sorry if it spoiled the serial killer twist and everything. I thought that was actually kind of a fun idea. But yeah, she enjoyed them, but she said they don't hold a candle to 1, unlike the Alien. Alien and Alien 2 is a hard pick.
And that's the biggest, I think, crit against the Predator franchise is it doesn't have its aliens, right? Like it doesn't have the one that stacks up. The other, I remember while you were talking, the other thing about number 2 that I like, and it was kind of a bummer that it didn't go the way it was supposed to, but Gary Busey's character in that film was supposed to be Dutch. It was supposed to be Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's how we know so much about the Predators when he shows up, and that's one of those things where when I found that out, years later, I was like, oh damn, that would have been good. But I guess Schwarzenegger didn't want to come back for a sequel.
Yeah,
which is too bad.
Big then. But yeah, and then there was it just Predator? That was okay.
That was a Shane Black one. That one was a weird.
Very weird
thing, and that like I really like Shane Black. Like I think that like Nice Guys and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang
amazing
are incredible films, and like I watched them not necessarily annually but not far off. And that the Predator film just felt like there were some really solid ideas in there, but for some reason it just didn't stick together, and it kind of feels like, I know they did a lot of reshoots, and you kind of get that feel when you're watching it. There's a lot of weird continuity stuff that doesn't necessarily work.
I think the whole ending feels like they added that in. Originally, it wasn't supposed to end like that, from what I heard. It was supposed to
be Ripley, right? At the end?
Yeah. They did this weird like shootout. I don't. It was very weird. And I like the breakout scene and everything, but it was definitely a forgettable film. But talking about one that I think looks really good, are you excited for Prey?
Yeah, it's so I found out about Prey at the time that I started writing my Predator
Oh, awesome.
arc at Marvel. So I knew they were making it, and I knew basic sort of after like after I'd written my first issue and had my outline, they I found out about Prey and what the story was. And so I thought it was interesting that like both are female led,
Yeah.
but one is set like in the past and one is set in the future. But yeah, you know, looking at the trailer for Prey, it looks really interesting. So I'm hoping it's good. I'm in Canada and we don't have Hulu up here, so
No.
I'm hoping that it ends up on one of our, you know, our other streamers. But who knows? I'll actually be, I think, in the States when it releases, doing this road trip that we're doing.
Yeah.
So maybe I might be able to watch it in a hotel somewhere. We'll see.
That'd be all. Yeah, it looks. I love that it's kind of going back to the basics of just hunt or be hunted type situation, not a overgrown predator, not
Right.
a
Yeah.
whole 7 or 8 predators, just one predator hunting these guys and they're hunting them back. I love that type of stuff. But yeah, very exciting for that movie. Okay, so I could talk about Predator all day because it's definitely one of my favorite franchises. But with Deathstroke, before I get to the question, I gotta say I read issue 10 and I was a little taken back because I was a little upset because I didn't hate him. And I always hate him. I always hate him. And I love reading it because the Deathstroke by Christopher Priest, every issue, I love reading it, but man, did I hate him. And he got just progressively worse.
Sure.
So when I read this, I'm like, he's not that bad. Why do I feel a little bit sympathy for him? And I love the disconnect when in the family scenes and even the hunting scene, he doesn't really feel like he knows what's wrong with that. I just loved all that. I felt like the art spoke a lot and the dialogue between him and his wife was extremely well done. So I was really surprised, to be honest. I didn't even know it was a year one story. So sorry, I didn't read it. So when I read, I'm like, finally a year one. I'm thinking, how do we not have a year one for Deathstroke till now? That's pretty amazing. But yeah, my biggest question now with reading it is, how does it feel to write a character like that? Because to me, he's like one of the worst people in the DC universe, but one of the most interesting to read.
Sure. I think, yeah, he's a terrible person. There's like no two ways about it. But you know, there's that old sort of saying that every villain's the hero of their own story.
100%.
And you know, you want to kind of play it from that. You want to make his motivations in his life and everything make sense from his point of view, and that's what we're trying to do in this year one, sort of explain how he could become who he is, you know, how he gets this sort of like you know, he's very, it's weird because he's very honor bound,
Yeah.
but it's also like one of the least honorable people in the world. So you know, we want to really establish like how, you know, how he decides, like his motto is my word is my bond, sort of. And so, you know, largely this whole series is him on one hit. Is his first contract. That's the whole thing. It's supposed to be his first contract. And it's early days. It's year one for Deathstroke. So it's not you know, he screws up a lot, and it's him trying to deal with that and trying to get better as it goes along. At killing people, not at anything else. Like he's still like, there's like scenes between him and his family where you're like, this guy is literally the worst human being, and I'm not sure why anyone would marry him or have another baby with him, you know, because we know that Addie's gonna, you know, they only have one child in the book and there's another on the way. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of like really dig into what happened to him after the experiments, and you know, he talks a bit, and I can't remember this in issue 1 or issue 2, but there is some dialogue, you know, internal, where he sort of discusses this idea of like sitting there with his family and how he should care, but it just is annoyed by them, you know, and you know, he realizes that there's sort of a disconnect, but you know, it's hard to care about something you don't care about, right? Like, and so, but that's, you know, in this year one, where that's a result of the experiment, is part of what changed him. You know, it changed him psychologically and physiologically. So, yeah, we really want to sort of dig into that and show that at one point he had like a good relationship.
Yeah.
And that once he became Deathstroke, once he went through those experiments and was changed, it changed him on sort of every level. So yeah, it was a lot. It's interesting to play around with, because you'd think of like Grant, his oldest son, and like you have a dad that you love who's great, and then all of a sudden he comes back from the hospital and he's a cold-hearted son of a bitch that just
Yeah.
won't uh play with you or hang out with you anymore, and only wants to show you how to kill things, and
Yeah.
it sucks, and so yeah, I think that there's a lot of stuff there with Slade Wilson early days that is really kind of interesting, and yeah, just dig into why he's such a son of a bitch now, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. That first issue was a lot to write, and so I'm glad that it sort of like resonated with people, because it's
Yeah. I was very surprised. The opening, I love that he was this very high emotion right before he started the experiment, and then after that, he felt almost like he wasn't even in his body. But I love those scenes with his family. This is my favorite part of reading comics, is the family dynamics and stuff. So watching him do the things and just kind of look in the distance and not look at his wife while she's talking to him, things like that. Really, I was like, he's an awful person, but I don't feel that same hatred I do later on,
right.
like him sleeping with his kid's wife and then killing her. Things like that, like, are the worst thing ever, and that fits Deathstroke. But I did love that he actually smiles at the end when he gets a contract, as if all of a sudden these emotions fly back in when he can murder someone.
Yeah.
It's sick, but it's also it fits Deathstroke, because I feel like when he's on the hunt, that is the only time he feels anything.
Sure.
Which is sad, but it also really worked well.
It's him, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to write, and Deathstroke is one of those characters, I think, that like when they offered it to me, I'm like, oh, like every so often I get offered books that just are, I usually end up passing on, that are just not a fit. And this
yeah.
is sort of me, this is my first series at DC. I've done things with DC here and there over the years, but never anything ongoing. And when they offered it to me, I was like, oh, this is like just a perfect thing for me to sink my teeth into. And like, you talked about the art. Dexter Soy is just
So
absolutely
good.
been killing it.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. Like, I'm happy. Like every issue has been great so far. But the third part of this is his first encounter with like a sort of a hero from the DC universe.
Oh,
I guess it's on the cover, so I can say it's him versus Green Arrow.
oh, perfect. My
And
other favorite character.
and it's literally just an entire issue that's almost like something out of the Raid. Like it's
Oh,
just the two of them brutalizing each other for 22 pages while Slade's trying to get to his target, and obviously Green Arrow's trying to stop him from it. And Dexter just killed on that issue. It's just, I can't wait for people to see it. It's so incredible.
that's awesome.
Every issue is great though. Like, every issue is great, but that
Yeah.
one is just my favorite.
No, I love that. I read a lot of comics. I'm going back in time, catching up on like the 80s and 90s and early 2000s with DC. I didn't get to read those. I grew up more in Marvel. But I'm reading the Nightwing, and there's an issue with Nightwing and Deathstroke, and they're just literally fighting the whole issue as they're like falling down stairs and kicking each other and punching. I'm like, man, why don't we see that more often? I love those type of issues where the art is working and the dialogue is basically them just shouting at each other until someone wins. So that makes me super excited, especially because Deathstroke is such a violent character. His fights are very much hand to hand, besides using a gun or something. So that's super exciting. I love Green Arrow. I don't know where Green Arrow series is. DC, come on. But no, I'm very excited for that. Are you going to be on that a while? I feel like Deathstroke's a pretty big name now.
Yeah. So right now we're just focusing on this year one. I'm still working on it. So one thing I've learned over the years is not to promise on anything for too long, especially in these times. But for now, yeah, I'm definitely on it, and hopefully for a while.
Awesome. I mean, year ones are a big deal. I feel like year ones, like the Flash year one, or Nightwing year one, Robin year one, Batgirl. Like these are titles that are kind of timeless. Like I can tell people to read them and not read anything else in the series. So that's pretty exciting to be able
Yeah, not a lot of pressure at all.
Yeah. Well, so far it's good, so that's a good
Right.
sign. But no, I love titles like that because it's easy for non-comic fans to get into.
Sure.
Because I haven't read Williamson's run. I want to, but when I picked this up, I was a little worried. I was like, "Oh, am I going to be lost?" And I saw year one. I was like, "Yes, I could just." I don't have to be like confused if something happened with him. I didn't get to read Shadow War yet, so that was exciting. So definitely, people watching, you can just pick this up by itself. I read it, no problems. You kind of just have to know that Deathstroke is Slade Wilson. That's really all you have to know. And are they gonna? Is he? Well, I guess you can't say because you're a hero. I was gonna say, is he gonna interact with Batman? Because he's always been kind of a, I don't want to say a Batman villain, but he's kind of been a thorn. And
Yeah,
Batman.
he's more like a Teen Titans
Yeah.
Nightwing guy, but yeah, right now we're just focusing on the year one, so
Awesome.
I can't say anything beyond
Okay,
that.
awesome. Well, my thing I'm super excited to talk about too because I love big two stuff, but my favorite books are always going to be the indie books because you're creating a universe on your own and you get so attached, like Shelter or unfortunately the Violent, even though most of them die. But it was those type of books stick with me longer because they're a single story told. Do you have any more? I know you said you had one with Aftershock, which I haven't heard of, which I'm now going to go look up after this. Do you have any more in that like crime era or even ones that aren't crime that are exciting that you want to talk about?
So yeah, my next book with Aftershock is called "There's Something Wrong with Patrick Todd," and it's about a 15-year-old telepath who sort of lives on his own. His mom is sick; she's in a care facility, and he's not been directly committing crimes, but what he's been doing is like going online and sort of luring out some sketchy folks and making them commit crimes by
Oh,
sort of telepathically piloting them sort of to rob a bank or whatever. And then he gets them to then turn themselves into the police, not only for the bank robbery they just did, but for whatever it is that they were doing, before. Like he can tell if they, he knows if they're criminals, and in the first one, he talks about basically going to catch a predator on a guy and instead forcing him to rob a bank, and then turn himself into police, and then those people end up in jail. So to Patrick's mind, he's kind of like keeping the balance, right? Like
yeah.
he's doing something wrong, but he's fixing it by helping the police capture these criminals. And so, like I said, his mom is sick; she's in a care facility, and he's using this money to pay for that. His father, he's never known, and so it's just about this kid trying to exist. Like living in hotels or moving from hotel to hotel, so that he can stay away from like children's services or anyone who might come looking for him, because he's not going to school, he's not doing that sort of stuff. But what I thought, the interesting thing about this book for me is that he's 15, so he's on like the thing with like children, right? They sort of learn empathy at a later age, and then
Yeah.
when they become teenagers, there's like a weird thing where they lose empathy and then have to relearn empathy,
100%.
and it's particularly worse in boys. And so Patrick is sort of at that age, right? But how, like, it's interesting to me that like he has to learn his empathy, but how can you feel empathetic when you never have to sort of feel bad or pay any consequences, really? Because
Yeah.
this kid, he can telepathically get what he wants, he can do
Yeah.
whatever he wants. And so it's I think it messes with his sense of empathy, and so he's trying to be a good kid, but he's doing these things that are sort of tugging him in the other direction. And I don't want to give too much away about the book, but it really, like, it will come to a head in the last issue, where he's got to decide which path he's sort of going down, and he has to sort of answer for, pardon me, a lot of what he's done, and a lot of things that he's done that he doesn't realize he's done. Like everything he does has a sort of ripple effect of consequence for others,
Yeah.
and their lives, and this will all sort of start to come back on him. But yeah, and it's kind of just like a fun. It's not fun. It is fun, but it's just weird, sort of like a crime thing, and it's got like a bit of crime. It's got this sort of supernatural element, I guess, with telepathy. it's got a bit of horror element to it too.
Yeah.
We have this guy called Zeus who shows up, who's hunting Patrick for something Patrick had done, or he thinks that Patrick had done in the past. And the guy is just absolutely horrifying. Gavin Guidry, who's drawing the series, who, you know, we created this thing together, just absolute like incredible character designs, especially on Zeus. So yeah, that's a, you know, it's a 5-issue thing coming out through Aftershock. First issue is July 6th.
Oh yeah, so next week. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, that right away I got that vibe of so many things. Such an interesting idea, because when we were first describing, I'm like, oh, that kind of gives me like, I don't know if you ever seen Death Note, but the
I have
vibe
not.
of somebody thinking they're doing good by killing criminals, but knowing they can never get caught, is that yeah, I'm free of it. Of course, he gets, as he does it more, he gets worse. And then I got vibes of some like Chronicles, or you know, the telepathic, like playing around, but then using it to actually do something horrible.
Right.
It's such an interesting idea, and it's interesting because you really, people, the readers are going to be like, well, they're bad people, so who cares? But then in the end, it's like, well, was that person really that bad? There's always that situation where they just take it into their own hands to do something horrible. But that sounds awesome. I love Aftershock. I can't show you, but I got like a whole shelf of way too many comics. But I do like Aftershock a lot. So the issues are coming out first. I usually collect the graphic novels. So
Right.
the
Yeah.
issues start this week coming up.
That's right. Yeah. July 6th.
Awesome. Well, that kind of goes with my next question, just in general. You know, with so many things, I know you just, the Kickstarter wasn't too long ago for Catch and Release, but do you have any other Kickstarters coming up, or any other books that are a little far out but you want to mention that keep an eye out? I know Kickstarters are such a big thing, and I love them because it's just kind of a way to support all the writers and artists out there nowadays.
So I'm not sure in regards to Kickstarter. One of those things with Kickstarter is that it was so much work to put it together, and everybody warned me, but I thought, you know, I have a long background in like self-publishing and doing indie comics, like well before I was working for any of the publishers. So I'm used to like printing my own stuff and dealing with printers, and packaging it all up and sending it off. But yeah, nothing prepared me for how intense that Kickstarter was afterwards. And of course, because of the pandemic, you know, there was so many delays in printing and shipping, et cetera, et cetera. So the short answer is really nothing right now. I am in talks with something to do with Murder Book, but it's still preliminary talks. Pardon me. So hopefully it comes together. My hope, my dream is to one day that Murder Book, the graphic novella format, like we do with Catch and Release, will be like an annual thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll put out, you know, these sort of 72 page books once a year. And I do have a couple of publishers interested that I'm talking to right now. But even I would say that's probably like 2023, 2024 before that really starts happening. Beyond that, like right now, I'm sort of just doing the stuff at DC. I've got, you know, as always, a few irons in the fire that hopefully will come to fruition, but it's all wait and see right now. And I've got like 3 creator-owned books that I will be pitching over the next 2 to 3 months. So hopefully 2023 is sort of where a lot of that sort of stuff starts coming out. But at this point, really nothing I can share specifically. I wish I could, but a lot of stuff in the oven right now, but none of it's quite baked.
Well, I mean, you got a lot coming out right now, so
sure, yeah.
You guys got to get ready for that. Like I said, Deathstroke definitely worth checking out, and then Batman Inc. is July or August?
October. The first issue is in October. Yeah, it just got announced, so October. And then there's something wrong with Patrick Todd is next week, goes for 5 issues, and it's like sort of an open secret that we will be returning for more Beyond the Breach at Aftershock.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm probably not supposed to be talking about it, and I apologize if anyone from Aftershock is watching this, but Damien and I are, you know, I'm writing the 2nd issue of the new arc right now.
Awesome.
And Damien's about halfway through drawing the first issue. So that's coming. It's pretty exciting. A lot of really big ideas in this one, and it's been a lot of fun. So
Awesome. Well, guys, check those out. The Violent you can get on Amazon. You can get Comeback. You can go to the bookstore. Catch and Release. I did the Kickstarter. So can people buy that just through?
Yeah, people
Amazon?
can buy that through my site. Actually,
Oh, awesome.
just go to edbrisson.com. There's like a store or shop link somewhere there on the page, and you can pick up Catch and Release. You can get a few of my books, and I'll happily sign them for you as well.
Awesome. Yeah, those guys, for fans, I know you guys watch a lot of my top 10 crime stuff. I put Catch and Release on there, up there with Criminal and Stray Bullets. Like these books, if you like that crime style, that dark and usually really somber, sad endings, definitely worth reading all those. But thank you so much for coming on. So many exciting series. Usually when I talk to someone, they only have like one or two, but they have a lot they can't talk about. We got like 5 or 6 that are coming out in the next few months. So that's super exciting. And Predator, do not delay again, Marvel, please. I had that on my pull list since like 2019. I know the legal stuff and everything. I know it's been a kind of a hard thing with that going on.
I'm also praying it's not delayed. This whole signing tour I'm going on originally was going to be signing both Predator and There's Something Wrong with Patrick Todd, but obviously because Predator's been pushed a month, it's not. But yes, I will also join you in that prayer. Let's light a candle.
Yes, please. And the omnibus. These are the two things I've been having on my comic shop owners. Just like they're coming. I'm like, yeah, okay. I just want to see it before I believe it. But I did order the Scotty Young cover, and there was one other one that blew me away. And then I love the Iron Man one where he has the Iron Man head holding on the cover. So I bought all 3. So Marvel released that. But yeah, very exciting. Thank you so much for coming on. And guys, check out all this work. There's so much to check out. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, man.